Hi there, Mark here from the locker room. Now, one of my good, although slightly eccentric friends, Luca Turrini, recently broke the world record for running the furthest distance on a treadmill in 24 hours. He ran an astonishing 261.2 kilometres. Now, to put that in context, he ran more than 6 consecutive marathons on the most boring and, in my opinion, probably the most unforgiving surface of them all, on a treadmill. Now, Luca is just an ordinary bloke, and he must have an incredibly strong mind. Now, mental strength and ultra running is a very popular topic. It's something that I talk about with my running clients and physio clients every day. And we always ask, why can some people push themselves so much further and so much harder than other people? And what actually makes these people tick? What makes them so strong mentally? So what we're going to do is hear it from the horse's mouth. We're going to ask Luca directly. Why, Luca? What made you think that running for 24 hours on a treadmill was a good idea?
Why? Well, there are a lot of reasons, really, not just one. So the first one is that I really genuinely wanted to raise some funds for family affected by cancer. This comes from, if you want, a personal experience, in the sense that I went through cancer through my mom, but also being a father. We got a glimpse of what it means when your child is unwell. And I really couldn't think what families affected by cancer might go through. So generally that was the idea why we wanted to do it, to raise funds for camp quality. And then there are other reasons that are personal. First, I had an unfinished business with a previous attempt in 2015. When I ran for 24 hours on a treadmill. It wasn't a world record attempt, but it was, I cracked during the night, and it wasn't a nice experience. In that occasion, I did 210 kilometers, and although I was very happy, deep inside I knew I could do better. And I guess thirdly, this is what I love doing. I found this passion in doing these crazy things between running and fundraising. And going for a world record attempt was simply putting myself out there and see whether I could do it, whether I could actually pull through and go through all the insecurities, if you want, and to see whether I had what it takes.
Okay, Luca, given that you're a normal bloke, although admittedly a little bit obsessed with running, did you actually think you could break the world record, or was it more of sort of a publicity stunt to help raise the profile of your amazing charity, Outrun Cancer?
I must say that I generally thought that I could break the record, simply because I've been there before in 2015, and I knew how bad I handled my training as well as my race day, and nutrition. Everything went wrong in 2015. So it was obviously a publicity stunt, and I thought that worst case scenario would be a publicity stunt, but deep inside I knew that I could do it, for how absurd that might sound. I went full on. There was no way back.
Right, I think something everyone is going to want to know is what training you did. Were you out there running 250 kilometres a week? Did you do all your training on a treadmill? Did you run outside much? Did you get on the trails? And do you think there was one particular training strategy that actually helped you the most, helped you achieve that goal?
Yeah, I certainly didn't run 250k weeks, simply because my body doesn't cope very well with it, and also because I don't personally think that it was beneficial, at least for me. But I did a lot of training on the treadmill. Essentially, probably 95% of my training was on the treadmill, on my own in my garage, looking at a gap through the two houses in front of me. So it was pretty much full on. And I didn't have much distractions, because I really wanted to feel the moment. And I think that ultimately turned out to be the key for the success. I'm a strong believer in simulating as much as possible the conditions for the race. So training on the treadmill in my home gave me the flexibility to run at night, run in the morning, run throughout the day, run after a long day at work. I did a little bit of running outside, but it was more of a mental break. And I would treat every run outside as, it's like I felt like a cage animal. So going outside was actually something to give me a little bit of freedom. But I can probably count in the finger in one hand the times I run outside in 6 months. So yeah, probably 4 or 5. So it wasn't very exciting training.
So if we apply that same training logic to what we call a normal event, normal in inverted commas, something like a 50k trail run or a 100k trail run, do you think that people need to be out there doing massive Ks? Do you think that's the biggest benefit training-wise? Do they need to be training through the night if that's what they're going to be doing racing? Do they need to get on the course? What do you think is a key strategy towards training for a big ultra event?
Yeah, as I said before, I'm a big believer in simulating what you're going to go through during race. So I think on a 100k race, obviously going out there on the course, running in the same conditions that you're going to be running on the day. So if you are planning to take long and be running throughout the night, then practice running throughout the night. Practice to run with your head torch. And I think another thing is important as well is trying to also test how you are gonna tackle the morning of the run. In my case, I did a lot of testing actually of having the breakfast, doing the same hours of sleeps the night before, just to see how I would wake up and start run. But I'm not a fan of massive Ks. But instead I'll do much more strength because of those the length of those type of runs.
Right, Luca, so everyone in our audience will have had dark patches in a race, and it's one of those patches where you feel like you can't carry on. It could be having no energy, it could be a dodgy stomach, it could be a little niggle or an injury which is gradually getting worse. All of these things play on your mind when you're in an ultra. And yeah, it's one of those things where you have to make the decision of should you carry on, can you carry on? Now, you must have had, I don't know how many of those moments during your 24-hour attempt on a treadmill, I hate to think. How many of them can you remember? How bad were they? And can you help share with us what you think got you through them?
I had a lot of bad moments, and you're rightly going to say how many can you remember, because I only remember a few, but funny enough, when I go back and see the footage, I actually look in pain throughout. So that, yeah, my mind probably has cancelled some of them. But I had few bad moments. I think one I had right from the beginning was due to heat. Essentially, was very hot on the stage, and I couldn't cool down. I was chafing, and my heart rate was right up to the sky. And that was mentally very draining. And in that particular case, you were there. You actually told me to take off my watch and my heart rate monitor, and then immediately I felt better, because at that point I didn't have any reference. I just and I felt better right away. And then I had a few other major meltdowns. I think the first one was around 11 p.m. So that was 13 hours in, and it was my first break, my first mental break. And when I got back on the treadmill, just everything was so overwhelming, and I actually got emotional, simply because it was the realization I had so much still ahead of me, and there was no way I couldn't slow down, and also the reasons why I was doing it just came back at me, and that was the moment where I had to make a choice, and I had to make a choice whether I would allow myself to slow down or I would just continue. And then after that, it was basically, yeah, every hour, I must admit, I had a big dip, because I was always waiting for the second wind of the day coming up and feeling energized, but that actually never really happened. But luckily, I had kind of prepared for it. I had different tools that I planned to use at different stages. So I think I went through because I knew the space where I was, and I knew what I had to do. So even nutrition-wise, I tested how I felt. So I had a lot of control of my body in terms of how I felt and what I should do in response of that. So yeah, there are a lot. Every time I look back, I find a new a new down, but essentially it was a clear idea of what I needed to do, and the confidence on the training and the 6 months of preparation, as well as the reasons why I was doing it. When the reason is big enough, you can do it.
Now, Luca, nutrition's always an interesting ultra topic. There's no right and wrong answers. What did you eat and drink during the 24-hour attempt? And did it work?
Yeah, this time I had a real strategy for nutrition right from the start until the end. I broke it down in several different sections. So the first section, I was eating a lot of solid food because I knew that I would not be able to eat solid food afterwards. So normal stuff like avocado sandwich with a lot of salt, just because I knew I liked it and it could go down very well. And then I progressed onto liquid food. So I was alternating I had a 3-hour schedule, and I was alternating between just carbs and pure carbs. Is basically a powder you can put in water, and then it's tasteless, so you can drink it and get calories. I had Ensure Plus. I don't know if I'm allowed to say brands, but Ensure Plus, because it gives you 300 calories for 200 mils of fluid. That worked very well. And then I also added some Tailwind just to have some caffeinated. But I was trying to keep it interesting so I wouldn't get sick of the same taste. And and essentially that was my nutrition throughout. And then I would add small rewards, and I will keep things interesting. I asked my support crew to surprise me with different foods so that I wouldn't expect it, and I will eat it. So crisps, but I focus most on salt. And the one thing I found that during one of my training runs, there was a complete disaster. So I had a 12-hour meltdown because mentally I wasn't there. What I found was that I needed just literally a teaspoon of sugar on my drinks to make all the difference. I think this challenge was mostly mental rather than physical, and therefore I found that although my body could use the carbs, I needed that little bit of sugar just to keep my brain focused. And so that was a really important discovery. So I tended to add a little bit more sugar, or just base my nutrition also around the sugar, just to keep my mind sharp.
Right, Luca, you and I stop for coffee almost every time we go for a run. Did you drink coffee during your treadmill run? Do you think it helped? Was it a latte, cappuccino, double espresso, or did you have gels with caffeine in them? So yeah, is there a coffee trick to ultra running?
I would have loved to have coffee. I did have ice blocks of coffee during training. That was very helpful. But during the race itself, actually, I just had caffeinated drinks and some gels. But the way I structured it as well, for the first 13 or 14 hours, I actually didn't want to rely on caffeinated drinks, and I just wanted to pick it up basically in the last few hours to make sure I could keep up the intake of caffeine from that moment on. I believe that once you are in the caffeine wagon, you just need to stay on it until the end. Otherwise, it's too much of a swing. So unfortunately, no coffee is definitely no lattes. And but yeah, in a previous run, where we did multiple marathons around Italy, I would stop halfway to have a coffee at every coffee bar I would find, but that's another story.
Right, Luca, the first time we met, you were actually a physio patient of mine, and you'd had a bad plantar fascia tear in one of your feet, and it was after running 20 marathons in 29 days through Italy, raising money for Outrun Cancer. So I guess in a nutshell, you've always been a bit nuts, but back then you were one of those runners who just sort of bounced from one injury to another. If it wasn't your plantar fascia, your hamstring or something else was playing up, or your glutes. And now you've turned yourself into the Guinness World Champion. You're not getting any younger. and you're somehow managing to do these amazing running feats. Is there any one thing or even multiple things that you can put that down to?
If I were to pin it down to one particular thing, I'd say that is all the strength training I've been doing since then, really. I think for the last 4 years I've been doing one session a week of strength training, and that changed literally everything. And I'm not just feeling stronger, I am stronger and I'm feeling stronger, but you can also see it from the way I run. Now I'm a bit more composed. Now in every picture that I am running, I don't look like I'm falling apart. And that is genuinely the one thing I put it down to. And now at any point I can turn up and run 30, 40K, 50K even, and I feel that I'm strong. Still a long way to go, and I could certainly do more, but even doing one strength class or even some exercises by yourself on a week makes a huge difference. And the thing is also, when you get into the habit, you can actually do it very easily at home. Going up the stairs now is a session, and standing. Another big difference, I guess, also is I've been standing at my desk for the last 5 years, and that made a huge difference as well, because I can stretch and I can also move around rather than sitting on my butt for 8 hours a day.
Right, do you have a pearl of wisdom that we haven't yet discussed that you think our runners should know? This is a bit of a tricky question because our audience ranges from 5K runners through to 100 milers and multi-day stage races as well. So I guess this question sort of encompasses all runners, but do you think there's something that you could share with runners that you know, whether it's mental or physical or training strategies or nutrition strategies or whatever, that other runners don't know? Is there one little thing that makes you tick that could make the rest of us Guinness World Champions, I guess is what I'm trying to ask?
I'm not sure about a pearl of wisdom. I think one big eye-opener for me was actually a study by Samuele Marcora. He's a scientist and at the University of Kent, and there's been a few books about it as well. But essentially, the idea of your body not being a limiting factor of your performance in endurance, but basically being down to your mind. And essentially the idea is, and it's been proven by research and tests, so it's not just an idea, is that you're never going to reach the physical limit of your body, but your mind is going to basically tell you to stop before that. So the perceived effort actually is going to stop you. It's not the physical effort that is going to stop you. And when you put that in perspective, it gives you actually something to work on. So especially for the long distance running, and we all know it, but it was good to see it on a study, on a research. And essentially you got a wall that separates you from your physical limits. And as the races go longer and longer, the wall gets closer and closer to you, up until to the point where you hit that wall, and that wall is your perceived effort. So it's a maximum perceived effort. At that point you have a choice. It's a choice of whether you're going to continue, because you know that you're not going to fall apart, and whether the pace you've kept up until 30 seconds before that felt fine, now it feels absolutely impossible. You got a choice of whether you're going to keep pushing yourself or you're going to say, no, this is actually my maximum effort. And for me that was a revelation, because it put again things in perspective. And I think I found some tricks that I can use to basically move that wall a little bit, or not think about that wall of perceived effort. So again, maybe it's not wisdom, maybe it's general knowledge, but check out the Samuele Marcora video on YouTube, and he explains that in much more detail.
Right, Luca, last question. Is there some mental preparation training or mental training people can do to help improve their running, especially for the long distance stuff? There's so many quotes out there in ultra running about running being 90% mental and 10% physical. So I guess it makes sense that we should try and do something to actually train our brains rather than just our bodies. Now, do you have any tricks? Do you visualise what it's going to feel like to finish? Do you visualise how you're going to get yourself through the dark patches? What do you think you can do to make your brain stronger, to make you a stronger runner?
Yeah, I was actually pretty anal on the mental preparation. I put together a mind map. In the middle, I had my goal, that was to run 261 kilometers, and the different factors that that basically helped me create a mental structure of what I was doing. So there were things like the reasons why I was doing it. So again, the charity, the personal reason, and the physical test. There was a section about the people that helped me, so all the teams around me. There was also a part about the commitment with the charity, with the sponsors, the commitment with the family, the investment I had, and all this kind of stuff. But there was also some things about visualizing. So I put a lot of effort in visualizing how I would feel at different stages of the run, especially during the night. And that was the things that I tackled first. So I identified, once I put this mind map together, identified the area that I was more scared of. That was the 3 o'clock in the morning kind of thing. And that was actually the part that I trained the most. And also what it turned out to be is that mind map was also something that I could go back to during the run when I needed to basically come out of the dark patches. So to give you an example, if I didn't feel like eating, I would go back and to that mind map and say, okay, this is how I'm meant to be feeling. So that's all right. I just need to add a little bit more sugar or a little bit of caffeine. And that helped me quite a lot. Or if I felt like I'm not focused anymore, I knew I could go back to music, or I knew that I could back to a video that I pre-prepared. So a lot of tools, I guess, in my arsenal, so that at any point in time, I knew that I was prepared for it. So I guess, that worked for me, and I've been using it since to try to break down basically the mental structure around the race, and I found it pretty useful.
Thanks very much for your time, Luca. It's been great having you here. You're an inspiration to all of us ordinary, non-world record holding runners. Good luck with your amazing charity work and what you've got on the cards with Outrun Cancer and your own running for the next year. Actually, I've got one more question. What can we expect to see from you in the next year? Maybe 48 hours on a treadmill?
Between you and me, no more treadmills, thank you. I'll leave that for others. I'm actually currently working on a project with my running mentor, if you want, Pat Farmer. So we are hoping next year to do a run together in Italy, going from the north of Italy, from the top of the Mont Blanc all the way down to Sicily. So it's a 2,000 kilometers journey, and hopefully we'll mix it up with a little bit of good food, good wine, and coffee. But I think my treadmill days are over, at least for a little bit. But more than happy to support anyone that wants to give it a try.